Was Master Farad Muhammad the same person as Muhammad Abdullah? If you haven't seen my previous video on this yet, please check out Wallace D. Farad was Wallace D. Ford. That's where we definitively prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that these were indeed the same person. But this video is about Muhammad Abdullah, and in the 1990s, Imam W.D. Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad, claimed that the Indo-Pak Imam based in Oakland, California, Muhammad Abdullah, was the same person as Master Farad Muhammad. He said there was no doubt about it in his mind. And who was Muhammad Abdullah? Muhammad Abdullah was born in Ahsanpur, British India. He became a school teacher in Badomalhi, this is an Ahmadiyya part of Pakistan, but he was a school teacher there in the 1920s. He then moved to Fiji in 1931, and he defended Islam from Hindu polemicists in Fiji. He wrote an Ahmadiyya column for a magazine, English-speaking magazine called Young Islam. He had two sons that actually moved to California in the 1940s and 1950s in order to study. He himself would arrive in America in July 1955. Soon after that, he would meet Warith ad-Din and he would meet Elijah Muhammad. 1957, 1958 is when he met Elijah Muhammad in his home in Chicago, and he would tutor Imam Warith ad-Din. Later, he would become part of Warith ad-Din's world community of Al-Islam and served as an imam in Oakland, and he died in 1992. You could find a full biography of his life, including a lot of documents and a lot of newspaper clippings, on this website, Ahmadiyya Fact Check blog. I've left the link here for you to check it out. It's very detailed, and yeah, check it out. So, why can't they be the same person? Number one, public record of Muhammad Abdullah in Fiji. So the record of Muhammad Abdullah is actually quite detailed. You can check it out at the Ahmadiyya Fact Check blog, and we can see that he was in Fiji at the time. Okay, this is when Master Farad Muhammad was in Detroit and Chicago and elsewhere in the United States. Muhammad Abdullah was on the other side of the earth in Fiji at that time, according to public records and according to his family. So that just can't be made up. One person can't be in two places at once. His family denies this as well. So the family denial is my second proof. And you can find this excerpt in Dr. John Andrew Morrow's book, Finding W.D. Farad. He says, he interviews Zafar Abdullah, who is the son of Muhammad Abdullah, and he says, quote, "My father was not Farad. When Farad was in Detroit, my father was in Fiji. A man cannot be in two places at the same time. I told the very same thing to Louis Farrakhan when he came to visit me." This same point is also mentioned in the earlier book by Michael Muhammad Knight called Blue-Eyed Devil, which you can check out. Number three, Farad was already running his own business in 1908. As we've already established in the previous video, Farad was Wallace Ford, and Wallace Ford was also known by 1908 as Fred Dodd, Fred the Greek, and Fred the Turk. Specifically, the press mentions him as Fred the Turk and Fred the Greek in 1908. He had his own tamale stand, his own kind of lunch wagon, and you can see this reference here is from Finding W.D. Farad, page 243, which means that W.D. Farad was already running his own business by 1908 in Oregon, when Muhammad Abdullah was only 3 years old. Okay, this is Muhammad Abdullah's tombstone. You can see 1905 is his birth year. The same birth year can be found on his death certificate. The same birth year is also mentioned by his family members. We have no reason to believe that he was born before this point. So, if Farad was running his own business in 1908, I think we can all agree that he'd have to at least be a teenager. And if not a teenager, then an adult. And of course, Nation of Islam lore says that he was born in 1877. We can't verify that. I can't prove that or disprove that. But it's reasonable to assume that Farad was born in 1880 or even prior if he's going to be running his own business by the year 1908 in Oregon. So, assuming Farad was born in 1877, which is the Nation of Islam birth year attributed to him, that would make Muhammad Abdullah 115 years old when he died, which is exceedingly rare. Only a handful of people in modern history have lived that long, most of them women. That is just something that doesn't happen. This would also mean that Muhammad Abdullah was 100 years old in this 1977 interview that you can find on YouTube to be a Muslim archive video of Oakland Masjid in 1977. This Just doesn't add up. You can watch the interview. He's clearly a man in his early 70s. The record shows that he was 72 at that time. This is not a picture of a 100-year-old man. Now, even if we assume that he was born a little bit after 1877, let's assume he was born in 1880 in order to run that business in 1908 at the age of 18, right? If we assume an 1880 birth year for Farad, again, this does not look like a 97-year-old man. Number four, Muhammad Abdullah may have even denied that he was Master Farad Muhammad. There's a quote attributed to him in the book Islam and the African American Experience, second edition, by Turner Richard Brent. And it says, quote, "It is all right to say I am Farad Muhammad for Wallace D. Muhammad. I taught him some lessons, but I am not the same person who taught Elijah Muhammad, and I am not God." Okay, so in other words, he was the tutor, the inspiration, the teacher of Warath Muhammad, but here he's explicitly denying that he taught Elijah Muhammad. Now, one of them had tonsils and the other one didn't. So according to the FBI file, Elijah Muhammad said that that Master Farad Muhammad had his tonsils removed. You can find this also in Michael Muhammad Knight's book, Blue-Eyed Devil, page 195. According to Dr. Morrow, who spoke to Muhammad Abdullah's son Zafar, Muhammad Abdullah still had his tonsils. So these are the relevant selections from each of those books. Um, so yeah, page 195 from the top, quote, God himself had his tonsils removed. And then the bottom picture is from Finding W.D. Farad by John Andrew Morrow. It says, quote, um, Muhammad Abdullah had his tonsils. Now, no one that met both Farad and Abdullah ever said that they were the same person. This is my sixth argument. On the left, you see Supreme Minister John Muhammad, who studied under Master Farad Muhammad and lived until, I believe, the 2000s. And then on the right, you have Sister Bernstein Sharif Muhammad, who was the personal secretary of Master Farad Muhammad. Supreme Minister John Muhammad never actually joined Wad of the Dean's organization. Um, he believed in Master Farad Muhammad very intensely as Allah in person until his dying days. He never made the claim that, oh, this person is my teacher and my master. Uh, Bernstein Sharif Muhammad actually did become a follower of Warafuddin Muhammad, but she also never claimed on record that these were the same person. And in fact, I have spoken to Sister Bernstein's, well, I've spoken to her daughter, her son, and her grandson, and all of them I've asked them, did your parents ever tell you that Muhammad Abdullah was Master Fraud Muhammad? And they've all said no. There are certain moles and scars that Master Fraud Muhammad had that Muhammad Abdullah didn't have. So you can see over here, there's a mole on the top right. This is above his left eyebrow. There's a mole next to his nose or his mouth over here as well on the left side of his face. We do not see that on Muhammad Abdullah's face. And for those of you who deny that this picture is Master Fraud Muhammad, okay, this is from the Detroit Free Press, printed in 1932. Again, see the first video that I mentioned. It goes into this with more detail. But again, you do see the mole in the top left, above his left eyebrow. Okay, so that mole, again, not in Muhammad Abdullah's picture. Partially what convinced me of this as well is just comparing the rhetoric. So, Muhammad Abdullah, to me, as someone who's been active in the Muslim community my entire life, as someone who's very deeply entrenched in the Muslim community, who's dealt with many people from the Indo-Pak region, Muhammad Abdullah really just strikes me as a well-educated Indo-Pak uncle, to be honest. Master Fraud Muhammad's rhetoric is very, very different. It's much more cryptic. There's a lot of, well, he talks about the tribe of Shabazz, he talks about the scientists. There are these theosophical influences in his teachings. There are these Jehovah's Witness influences in his teachings. There's a lot of pop science and pop history. And the rhetoric is just completely different. And it's hard to believe that one would go from speaking, about naturalism and Yaqub and 6,000 year history and the black man is God to then just being the kind of run-of-the-mill Pakistani imam. Now, counter argument number one, most people just cite that Imam Warithuddin said that he was Master Farad Muhammad. And of course, Imam Warithuddin had to be right. My response to this is that number one, Imam Warithuddin technically said that he believed that Muhammad Abdullah was Farad. He never actually flat out said that Muhammad Abdullah told him that he was Farad Muhammad. And he explicitly says this in a couple interviews. He says this in the speech that I got the screen grab from at the beginning of this PowerPoint, but also here. He says that we do not have a record, an authentic record of Muhammad Abdullah being Farad because, quote, he kept himself carefully hidden. Now, keep in mind that Imam Warithuddin actually never met Master Farad Muhammad. He was born in 1933. He would have been a baby when Master Farad Muhammad was still active. He was born basically at the cusp of Master Farad Muhammad leaving for good in 1934. But he never met the two of them. He just had this hunch, he had this belief. It was a very strong belief that this was the same person. But again, the facts don't support that. And in a sense, there's kind of a continued spookology because then you're implying that Muhammad Abdullah covered his tracks so well, um, being in two places at the same time, having this birth year that he was hiding for his whole life, among other things, that it's kind of a continuation of this spookology, this, that he's this 115-year-old person that was secretly Master Farad the entire time. Now, Dr. Akbar Muhammad, the brother of Warithuddin Muhammad, he also denies that Abdullah was Farad, and you can find that in Finding W.D. Farad, page 122. It's understandable why Warithuddin Muhammad would have this belief, though, because again, Muhammad Abdullah was this older Indo-Pak guy. He was this teacher, this friend of his father. He was around the same height as Farad. Um, a lot of our latest research suggests that Farad came from the Indian subcontinent or British India. So it's an understandable conclusion to come to, but it's another case of close but no cigar. Counter argument number two, but Muhammad Ali's wife or his ex-wife, Khalila Ali, said that Elijah Muhammad introduced Muhammad Abdullah to her as Master Fraud Muhammad. That's true. She did say that. She says that even in this Omar Shabazz interview that you can find on YouTube. Response, no one else ever reported this story. Muhammad Ali never even said this. And even Warithuddin would have said this. And Warithuddin would have had the incentive to. I mean, if Elijah Muhammad really did say that this was Master Farad Muhammad, Warithuddin would have said that. Other people would have said that. Why would Elijah Muhammad just tell this story exclusively to her and to no one else from any of his followers, any of his family members, any of his children? It's also possible that she misheard Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad, after all, had a speech impediment. Maybe she misheard him, maybe he misspoke. It's unclear. Also, Khalil Ali never actually met 1930s Farad, so she wouldn't be in the position to independently verify that these two were actually the same person. And this is a more cynical perspective, but Elijah Muhammad may have actually introduced her to him as Farad, maybe in order to secure the high-profile conversion of Muhammad Ali. If Elijah Muhammad's claiming that he's in touch with Master Fraud Muhammad, and if Muhammad Ali is like, "Hey, I want to meet him. This is God in person," maybe Elijah Muhammad wanted to humor him like that. Maybe he wanted to treat him like a VIP and introduce him to this person as Master Fraud Muhammad in order to secure his conversion. Muhammad Ali, of course, was a very famous boxer at that time, and so this would have put Elijah Muhammad in a public spotlight. So that's a possibility too. Now, I believe that she believes it. She obviously strongly believes that this person was Master Farad Muhammad, but just based on the evidence, Muhammad Abdullah simply isn't Farad Muhammad. Counterargument number three, but Farad was an Ahmadiyya, right? People assume that, well, Muhammad Abdullah was an Ahmadi, and Farad Muhammad, there may be some evidence that he's an Ahmadi, and this is kind of the conclusion that Dr. Fanusi has come to. After all, Farad used the Maulana Muhammad Ali translation of the Quran. Now, the problem with this argument is that the Maulana Muhammad Ali translation of the Quran was the first and only, at that time, translation of the Quran in the English language done by a Muslim. All other translations of the Quran prior to the Maulana Muhammad Ali version were done by Christian polemicists and Orientalists. So Farad using that translation is just, this was the only Muslim translation in English at that time. Secondly, someone may say that he may have used other Ahmadiyya literature. It's possible. I haven't seen that. I don't see any evidence of that. But let's just say that he did use Ahmadiyya literature. This was some of the only literature in English on Islam by Muslims. But also, look, Farad used the Bible. That doesn't make him a Christian or a Jew. He used Jehovah's Witness literature, like Deliverance, as we covered in another video. That doesn't make him a Jehovah's Witness. He told people to listen to Judge Rutherford on the radio. That doesn't make him a follower of Judge Rutherford. He used pop history books like The Story of Mankind and The Conquest of Civilization, which I've covered in my previous video on the actual facts. There's also no extant evidence that Farad taught Ahmadiyya doctrine. So he never mentions Mirza Ghulam Ahmed in the Supreme Wisdom lessons or anywhere else, as a matter of fact. Farad's teachings were actually quite different from the Ahmadiyya teachings. He taught that there was no life after death. He taught that the black man is God. He taught the 24 scientists or the 12 scientists. He taught the mothership. He taught about the tribe of Shabazz and many, many, many other things that are just not associated with the Ahmadiyya whatsoever. And according to Supreme Minister John Muhammad, Master Fard Muhammad never prayed, which would be very, very strange for an Ahmadiyya. Yeah. So in conclusion, Farad and Abdullah were definitely two separate people. They were in two different places at the same time in 1930s. Abdullah's family denies that he was Farad. Abdullah may have denied that he was Farad himself. Abdullah never claimed that he was Farad. Everybody agrees on this. No one who met both Farad and Abdullah ever said they were the same person. It's only people that met Abdullah only. Abdullah first came to the US in the 1950s. There's no record of him being in the US prior to that. And remember, nowadays we have everything's been digitized from newspaper records to ship manifests to other information. We should be able to find proof for him in the United States prior to 1955, but we just don't. Abdullah was also just way too young to be Master Fraud Muhammad. If Master Fraud Muhammad was already active, owning his own business in Oregon in 1908, this is just way too early because Muhammad Abdullah would have been pretty much in diapers at that time. And of course, as someone who lived till 1992, it's just very, very unlikely that someone would live that long. These are super centenarians. Um, we're talking maybe 10 people in the world that live to that age in the modern times. Um, of course, they had different scars, different moles, and different tonsils. And yeah, their rhetoric completely different. Their teachings were completely different. So thanks again for watching. A lot of this you can find in my new book, W.D. Farad, The Man, Myth, and Mystery Behind the Nation of Islam. I'll leave a link to the book in the description section of the video, co-written by myself and Dr. John Andrew Morrow. Thanks for watching, and as always, I bid you all farewell. Assalamu alaikum.